So, with the release of Nightreign's DLC, The Forsaken Hollows, there was a boss added called the Balancers. Now, upon defeating the Balancers, you are given a relic, and then you are given an extra relic when defeating the Everdark Balancers. Those relics are the Will of the Balance and the Will of the Balancers. Now, on these relics, you are given an improved melee attack and also an improved skill attack. Now, the improved skill attack is essentially just improving all of your L2 abilities. That ability is improved by 15%, and both of these do stack. Now, you may be thinking, where am I going with this? I am going somewhere. Just be patient, my little treacle. Obviously, if you're using the most powerful relic setup, and this potentially could be one of the most powerful relic setups, what is the best build to use with this setup? Obviously, you want something that is going to give you a very good and very strong L2, because there is no point using something that doesn't do much damage on the L2 anyway, something like, I don't know, Ice Spear or something like that. You want something that is going to be insanely powerful, preferably keeps you out of distance, out of range from bosses' attacks, but also does a lot of damage. That's where the Halo Scythe comes in. Now, you're probably thinking, why the Halo Scythe? Well, because it's cool as hell. No, that's not the real reason. The Halo Scythe is one of 4 Reapers, and it's only 1 in 2 Purple Reapers. So the chances are it's going to be very easy to find. But not only that, the L2 is very strong, it has an insane damage output from distance, and it also doesn't take much FP. And if you're struggling to find it, you can also find it at some of the merchants. Obviously, that's RNG dependent. Chances are, if you go into an expedition thinking you're going to get it from a merchant, it's not going to be there. So I would always advise running Dormant Reapers. Now, as for the build, what I use is both Balancer Relics, and then I also add the Dark Knight of the Champion in, because you get the affinity boost, which is 10%, and obviously the Halo Scythe, the actual bullets from the Halo Scythe are pure holy damage. So, you're getting the 10% from the boost affinity from the Dark Knight of the Champion, and then obviously you get the 15% from each of the Balancer's Relics. So overall, it's probably working out to about 50% damage increase just off your 3 base relics. Now, for the Deep of Night relics, depending on who you're using, you want to have the Holy Attack Ups +4, because that is the strongest way to boost this damage on this weapon. Affinity Attack +2 gives you a 10% damage boost, and the Holy +4 gives you a 12% damage boost. It may not seem like a difference, but over 3 of the relics, that is a 6% extra damage boost just from using the Holy ones. Now, if you don't have Holy +4, you can use Holy +3 and Affinity +2. Those are pretty much the same, but obviously, depending on the character you want to use, some of those you will want to use their personal relics. Like Iron Eye, for instance, you will want to use his inflicting heavy damage when an opponent is inflicted with poison. Now, the question everyone probably wants to know, which is the best character to run this specific build on? Now, the weapon itself is a Dex Faith weapon, so a Dex character is going to be best. It has a B scaling in Dex, so obviously your Iron Eye and your Duchess are going to be the first picks. Now, the Ash of War, because it's a unique skill to this actual weapon, it should scale from Faith. I've tested it over a bunch of characters, which I'll show you in the video, and it doesn't really make a big difference whether you're using a Dex character or a Dex Faith or a Strength Faith and so on, or just a Faith like the Revenant. Now, as for the character that is going to do the most damage from this weapon without anything else involved, without the Duchess restage, without Iron Eye's mark, without the Undertaker's buff, that is going to be the Iron Eye. A close second, we have Wilder. And lastly, Duchess and the Undertaker give you pretty much the same damage, with the Duchess taking it by a small amount. But remember, the Undertaker does require her Dex relic to be able to get this kind of damage. Everyone else that's not mentioned, it's just because they don't do nowhere near as much damage as the 4 that I have already mentioned. Even the Revenant with her S scaling in Faith doesn't give her any benefit to this weapon. Now, let's get into the damage with their specific abilities that allow them to help, like the Iron Eye's mark, the Duchess's restage, and the Undertaker's buff. Now, number 1 is a little bit difficult to work out, mostly because when you're using the Iron Eye, his mark pretty much pops every time you hit them with the first bullet of the Halo Scythe. So number 1 is going to come in as the Duchess. As you can see here, once she has finished her chain of attacks, I did 5 for every character and hit them with a restage, and you get the 50% of the most recent damage within 3 seconds, and as you can see, it takes up to 5,358. Then we have the Iron Eye, but the problem is every time you use the Halo Scythe Ash of War, the mark pops way too frequently. Now, obviously you could put something on that extends his mark, but that means you would have to give up a relic that is boosting the damage. Now, if you're running the Dark Knight of the Champion, that's only 10%. If the mark persists for longer, it might be worth actually doing that. So overall, the Iron might actually give out more damage for you and obviously your team than the Duchess would, but the restage still gives out more just from my testing. And then lastly, if you're using the Undertaker, when you're in her trance state, you get a damage boost. When you use the Halo Scythe in this state, you do get extra damage. So normally John Nightreign would reign supreme when it comes to Ash of Wars, but this particular scenario he doesn't. Now, who would be my pick if running it in trios? My pick in trios would be the Duchess. There's a few reasons. One, her cancel frames from her dodge are very fast, so if you're stuck spamming an Ash of War, you can basically just spam dodge and you'll get out much quicker than you would if you was using any other character. Two, she obviously has her invisibility ultimate, which means that if you and your team are running like, you know, L2 builds and all can spam from distance, you can make everyone go invisible, you can spam your L2 to your heart's content, obviously until you're no longer invisible. And the last reason is because of her restage. Obviously that restage works for all of your teammates. I know the Iron Mark does, but for my testing, the Iron Mark gets popped really quick. So if you're using the Duchess, you can restage everyone's L2, not just your own. So overall, my pick would be the Duchess, with a close second being Iron. Now, if you're playing solo and playing the Deep of Night, my choice would always be the Wilder. Obviously, you're sacrificing quite a bit of damage, but the problem is, if you're playing the Iron, the Duchess, in the Deep of Night, higher depths, you are going to be one shot if you get caught in your spam. Now, doing this build in solo is actually quite difficult because obviously it's quite a long animation and the bosses aren't just going to stand there and look at you. They will obviously attack you if you're spamming an Ash of War from distance. So is it worth running in solos? I have run it in solos for the Iron and the Duchess, and it does work quite well, obviously if you're using it against like holy bosses and stuff. So yeah, it can work, but just be very careful that you will get caught spamming your L2 animation and you will be one shot if you're using the Duchess or Iron, unless you have, you know, some pretty decent defenses. Now, it's not to say that it can't be used by the Wilder, the Undertaker, or any other character. It's just the best characters to use this build for the most damage are going to be the Duchess and the Iron. Now, obviously, if you've got an Iron on your team, you could use this with the Wilder and you would get the damage boost that way. So you can always just use it with Wilder if you're playing with someone who is using the Iron. But overall, Duchess is going to be your best pick for damage. So gamers, that's pretty much all I've got to say. Obviously, remember, you will probably need to run Dormant Reapers. And also, if you're hitting the boss with the weapon and the Ash of War at the same time, you will do more damage than you would if you was just using the bullet from distance. It's not much, but it does amount to a fair bit when you're doing it over a period of different attacks. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, if you want to be safe, just use the bullet from distance. If you're brave and you have massive balls, then use the weapon, close range. And I do think you can also get the bleed prop from the weapon as well. So if you're using Iron, you're going to get, you know, his arcane in there, and it's going to bleed the boss as well as hitting him with the holy and the weapon damage. So gamers, that is pretty much all I got to say. Let me know in the comments what your favourite L2 spam build has been in Nightreign since the Will of the Balancers has released, because it is fun to try out different builds. Stay safe, catch you on the next one, peace.